Good morning. So, as everybody knows, Metallica just recently released 72 seasons. They did release, three or four singles prior to the album's official release, right? So, we all heard those singles ahead of time. Finally, got to hear the rest of the album. I'm going to tell you what I think about it. So, I've watched a lot of the reviews that have been popping up online. Some of them I agree with, some of them I don't. I'm going to give you my perspective as a lifelong Metallica fan. You know, being a teenager in the mid to late 80s, I grew up and witnessed their ascension to becoming the biggest metal band in the world, right? So obviously those first five albums, up through the Black Album, have a pretty special place in my heart. Uh, you know, but 72 seasons, it's been 7 years since their last album. There was an 8-year gap between Death Magnetic and Hardwired. And they said, oh, it won't be 8 years. They shaved a year off that, so good for them, right? But let's talk about Metallica. So they've been around for 40 years, right? They've been putting out records for 40 years. They're certainly not the same band that they were in the 80s. And one of the things that kind of rubs me the wrong way is when people are expecting them to put out an album, I don't want to say as good, but that goes back to their roots, of those first four albums, right? That's not who Metallica is anymore. Just watch them perform some of those songs live today, and if you look at them perform those songs live, back in the 80s when they were on tour, totally different animal, right? So Metallica isn't the same band, right? But this album, it is pretty good, right? No, it's not 80s Metallica, but there are some songs on here that are pretty damn good songs. The one that really stood out to me, surprisingly, was the longest song on the record, was Inamorata, right? Over 11 minutes long. It's kind of a slow-paced song. A little bit of, doomy, kind of sludgy thing. Not really what you would expect from them at this time. I just thought that song, they really captured some of the stuff that they did, 30 plus years ago. The catchy chorus, the lyrics that I could really relate to. There were lyrics on this album that were certainly pretty cheesy and repetitive. But towards the end of that song, they do some guitar harmonies that, you probably haven't heard harmonies like that since Injustice for All, like on Blackened. There's this one clip, it's maybe about 20 or 30 seconds, where they do this guitar harmony, and, it was just fantastic. It was like, yes, this is what Metallica has been missing for the last 30 years. And there's some other songs on here that stand out, that have some really good moments. 72 Seasons is pretty good. If Darkness Had a Sun, has a really good chorus. The intro is way too long. We'll get into that. But one of my biggest problems with this album is that it is too long. too many of these songs just, they're playing something for 16 measures that they could play for 2 measures or 4 measures. You could cut 20 plus minutes off this album and it would be so much better. The other thing that really bothers me, and I find this to be a huge distraction, and it just takes away so much, it is Lars drumming. I do not like Lars drumming at all. I have never heard someone play so many 16th notes on a snare drum in my life. Like, there are so many, so many snare drum fills there where he hardly uses his toms at all. The snare drum is so loud. It's distracting. It's repetitive. It's lazy. It just kills some of these songs for me. Where, I know they do their own thing. Whatever. It's just, it kills it for me. It really does. And the bass drum is so goddamn loud. I swear to God, I thought I was going to damage my speakers. Like, how does that happen? How do you miss that in the mix? But his drumming is, I'm not saying he can't keep a beat. He absolutely can. Lars has been a fantastic drummer throughout his career. But this just comes across as so uninspired and so lazy. And like I said, it's just distracting. Like, I would almost rather listen to this song with no drums whatsoever. You can copy and paste that drum beat from probably 5 or 6 songs. And it's the same thing over and over and over again. Nothing innovative, nothing inventive, nothing thoughtful. It's just so vanilla. It makes me not even want to listen to it, halfway through, I've listened to this album 4 or 5 times now, and halfway through some of these songs, I'm just hitting the skip button because I don't want to hear his snare fills. It's disappointing. So, I feel like Lars is probably the weakest point in the band now. They're not the band they were in the 80s. They weren't the band they were in the 80s and the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s. That Metallica is gone. They wrote some great music. They put out some fantastic albums, right? Being an old school fan, I like the early stuff. I'm not saying they haven't written good music since then. They have. They've written some bad music too. This is probably their best album in 30 years. It's got some strong material. It's got some very, very strong guitar riffs. But what do you expect? Like, this is exactly what I expected. But I didn't expect the drumming in the mix and everything to be like this. That's certainly disappointing. Like I said, the biggest thing is I think it's distracting. I think Lars has become a liability. But I do like the album. There's 4 songs on this album that I think are pretty good. They'll probably be on my playlist for a while. Inamorata, If Darkness Had a Sun, 72 Seasons, probably Lux Eterna, But there's some great moments on this album. Anyway, coming from an old metalhead like me, those are my thoughts. Whether you agree, disagree, let me know. But hope you all have a good day and enjoy it.